A lot of people don't know about the Nook and their accomplishments and how advanced their civilization was. They are known for these terracotta statues. You can find them in a lot of museums. We're talking about 1400 to 2000-year-old terracotta figurines that these people made. They was highly advanced. Nobody know what happened to them. They disappeared around 300 AD. But these people was advanced. They knew a lot. So now with Egypt, they came up with Egyptology to try to rob us of our accomplishments in Egypt. Now, there is no Arabology or Europeanology, but if it wasn't nothing special about African people, they wouldn't be digging up our ancestors and putting their bodies, on display, putting the babies' bodies on display, the hair on display, everything from our toothpaste to gum and jewelry. All these things we find in ancient Egypt, you can look in the Cairo Museum or in the British Museum and find the accomplishments of African people. Meanwhile, your kid is sitting in school right now learning about slavery, learning about, Dr. King. We came from slaves and we were nothing before that. If it wasn't for people like Dr. Ben and Dr. Clark, who said, we come from greatness. We come from great civilizations. We come from kings and queens. We wasn't slaves. We was prisoners of war. If it wasn't for these men standing up and saying this, we wouldn't know a lot of the things that we know today. But you get black people today who have no clue who these men are. You get people that look at, Dr. Clark and Dr. Ben and say that, these niggas is crazy. Something was wrong with them. And they run back to these preachers and pay these preachers, all this money to tell them lies and fairy tales. To tell them that it's okay that we was enslaved because, God allowed it to happen. It was God's will that we was enslaved. That, it's okay we was enslaved because, we disobeyed God. We was bad. But they don't explain how all the other races got to be bad and get away with it. Just us Africans, we got enslaved and we got punished because we was bad, because we supposedly broke some covenant. They don't explain this stuff. It don't make any sense when you try to explain it anyway. They don't explain it. And you got to understand, if you believe that, we just got saved from a life of sin, because you got black people who honestly believe that, it was God's will that we got put in slavery. We got saved from a life of savagery and a life of sin and destruction by the white man, brought over to this country and placed in slavery because we wasn't acting right. People actually believe that. And they won't admit it until you start getting into that line of questioning. And I dialogue with people, and I have had black people tell me this, that, we wasn't doing nothing in Africa. We ain't doing that. We was running around naked. We ain't had no civilizations. What? And this just happened, which is one of the reasons why I'm doing this video. I mean, I had about 4 black people tell me this in a week span. So I'm like, this shit is crazy. I got to do a video. I got to talk about this. You need to wake up and understand. Like, I think it's enough information out there now to where people can look and see, if they want to see, what's going on, what took place. But you got people who honestly believe that we came from nothing. Meanwhile, you got people like Creflo Dollar and TD Jakes. They get to make millions of dollars telling you lies and fairy tales. While Dr. Ben and Dr. Clark, they died poor, trying to tell you that you were great, that you came from greatness, that you were something. Now you have to understand that this whole effort to hide the accomplishments of African people is backed by money. It's backed by power, by influence, by persuasion. This whole system of religion is backed by billions of dollars. It's backed by a whole structure. You got a pope, you got churches, you got so many things to make this stuff look authentic and to make it, to validate it. It's backed by so much money and people. To cover up the money they put billions of dollars into covering up our history, to keeping it away from us. You got to understand, these people control the education system. So they decide on what your kid gonna learn. They decide. All this stuff is backed by history. A history of money, of murder, of war. Mass graves we find. I mean, they found so many mass graves in Africa, of people being wiped out. Remember the Tasmanian people, wiped out, gone, extinct. And you're not going to find another one. This stuff is backed up by so much. And, of course it's going to be tough to figure out the truth, to find out what's real. And the only place we can go to is into books. But when you actually go over into Africa, the proof is right there. And they know that your ass ain't going to go to Africa because they done scared you away from Africa. Because they keep showing you feed the children. They keep showing you all the stuff, that's going on over there. They done scared you away from going there. So the whole thing is all the stuff we talk about in these videos, videos I put out and other people put out about Africa, all the stuff we talk about, people are not sure if it's true or not. They're not 100% sure. Some people still waiting for the white man to validate what we say, or they're waiting for TV to back up the information that we put out. And that's a shame. And that's what's taking place because they back their lie with so much money, and we not backed by money. We can't even get our people to buy a fucking book. We're not backed by, a whole structure, a whole system, to help us put out the truth. We're not backed by that, but they have television. They have influence and power to back up the lie, to cover up your accomplishments, to cover up your history. And when I say they, I'm talking about a governmental structure. Again, I don't buy into that whole every white man is covering up the accomplishments of black people. No. Because our education system is controlled by a government. This is a governmental structure that is in place that has been covering up our accomplishments for a long time, hundreds of years. And people got to wake up, and you got to put effort into it. If you want to figure out the truth and you want to know what's going on, pick up a book. Go buy a book. This is why I have books popping up on the screen, sources, so you can see where I get a lot of my information from. You get some time for people who can afford it. Go to Africa. Go there and look at some of this stuff. You can go and find and look and see these civilizations. You can find videos about this stuff. Some people just, they don't care about the accomplishments of African people. They don't care what we have done. They wait until the conversation, happens. A conversation starts about our civilization, our accomplishments, and they don't got no input. They don't know what to say. They don't know how to jump into the conversation and say, hey, well, wait a minute. The Africans, we did this. We invented this. People don't know how to say that because they never got the information, which is why I'm putting out this video. You need to understand that we wasn't just a bunch of butt-naked people in Africa. We had civilized civilizations backed up with money, power, kings, and queens. Now understand, before European conquest, there was no debate of whether or not Africans was sophisticated or advanced or not. There was no argument because it was plain to see. It was everywhere. Our advancement was everywhere. Our accomplishments you can see all over the place. Now we can go to Luango in the Congo. You can see that these people had a royal family. They had a royal palace. The complex stretched over 1.5 miles long. They entertained a lot of prominent people there. They entertained kings and royalty. They entertained Europeans. They came in there and they can see that these African people was advanced. They were skilled in mathematics and science and astrology. As a matter of fact, Luango in the Congo is where you find one of the oldest calculators on earth. This is the Ashango bone. It is the fibula of a baboon. It's over 20,000 years old. We were advanced. We had an advanced civilization. I mean, there was no debate back then. You can see it. The Europeans know. They know what we had. So you had the Europeans come in there and they sat and they dined with these Africans. They knew that the Africans was sophisticated. They was advanced. They knew that they had gold. They had wealth. These people traded. The Luango traded with people from all over the world. They had trade routes that they owned. And what happened was you had the Europeans and missionaries coming there. They converted a lot of the people to Christianity. And later, when slavery was, starting out, they came in there and they basically stripped the whole place of its wealth, enslaved a lot of the people, wiped out a lot of the people. They looted the place. They came in there and they was the ones who was acting like savages and stripped the place of its wealth. This is what governments do. This is what happened with a lot of Africa, as you will see when you start doing the research. You had advanced civilizations. You had kings and queens that was nice, that was cool with these Europeans because they was doing business with them. And that's what you do in the business world. You invite people over. Come to my palace, sit down and see, what I got. Let's talk. And they got stabbed in the back. And that's what happened. Stabbed in the back. A lot of these people became slaves. You might be a descendant of one of them. You don't even know. You have no idea. And this is what was going on. So you got to understand that this stuff it's not no secret. They know what we was able to do. They know how advanced we was. I mean, the palace still exists. It's still there. It's in ruins. Here it is. You can see it. This ain't no story that you got to go get validated by some dude on CNN or on, public broadcasting system or one of these Discovery channels or History Channel where they tell nothing but lies. You can go and see it for yourself. They try to hide this stuff from you, but you can't hide it because it's still there. You just got to do the research and you got to look for it and you got to see how advanced African people was because they know already. It ain't no secret to them. They know. They know. Now we also have the Kilwa in Tanzania along the Swahili coast. The same story. You have an advanced civilization of people. You have people with a royal family. They had cities. They traded in everything from oil, gold, ivory, everything that you would consider to be a luxury product in the 13th and 15th century. These people traded in it. They sold it until the Portuguese, Vasco da Gama, and the Europeans came and, basically looted the city, ransacked the place, stripped it of its wealth, wiped out a lot of the people, enslaved some of them. And, it still stands today. Still stands today, the ruins of this great African civilization. You can find the ruins still today. You can find traces of these people still today, but nobody talks about them. You don't know nothing about them. They don't even acknowledge that these people exist. You only find it in books. They don't even talk about this stuff. You don't see no video on it. And this is the crazy thing. You need to understand that mainstream media, they're not going to come out and admit that they committed genocide. These governments are not going to admit they killed off and stripped the wealth from these African civilizations. But the whole spit in your face is that they won't admit that we did something. That, we did something that was great, that was good. That's the part that's crazy. It's like, if you invite some people over to your mansion, let's say you wealthy, you successful, you invite some people over. They come over, they eat with you. You show them how advanced you are. You show them your accomplishments and that you did great things. But then they come back with a bunch of people and then rob you, strip you of all your wealth. So, years later, you on the street, you homeless, you ain't got nothing. And these people walking around, they got everything. They got money, they got wealth, and they won't even admit that you did something great with your life. They won't even admit that you accomplished all these things and that at one point you was wealthy. They won't even admit it. They won't even tell nobody, hey, yo, this boy used to be the man. He had money, he had wealth, he had power. We took it from him. But he did accomplish these great things. They won't even do that. They won't even do that. And then, the descendants of these people, they have no clue. You have no clue. Again, you could be related to these people. You can come from these people. You have no clue. But you don't even know what these people accomplished and the great things that they did, because a lot of people just don't go look. People rather watch Empire. They don't care. And then when a conversation arises, when you get in that argument with somebody, you can't even come up with facts to debate with. So you accept what they said because, it sounds good. You accept that we want nothing but, naked people dancing around the fire with bones in our lips. People just accept that because they don't have the information. Nobody wants to look around and do the research. Nobody wants to fight for the accomplishments of African people. So we have to really start looking and doing the research of, what our African ancestors accomplished. Looking at these civilizations and seeing how great they were. Looking at the royal families and seeing, who these people really were. What did they accomplish? What did they invent? What did they do? I mean, it's amazing. You can look in so many places in Africa, so many different countries, and see that these people had kingdoms. They had sultans. They had royal families. And, it's a shame that, a lot of black people have no clue about this. And, you go over there and all we find is ruins. And it's, you got mostly white people writing about this stuff. You got mostly Europeans writing about the history of African people. The conquest of African people. You find Europeans writing about it, putting this stuff in books. And, we just don't know about it. We're not taught this stuff. So you have to really start researching your history and knowing that we came from greatness and knowing that we came from, we had royal families that had more money than, Britain, had more money than, Sweden. A lot of these countries that got royal families today. Mansa Musa, another example, rich dude. He was a Muslim. He converted to Islam for political reasons. And stinking rich. Super rich. Supposed to be worth over $400 billion. A lot of people don't even know about Mansa Musa. And we got to start looking back at our history and seeing the MO. And the MO is always the same. You have an advanced civilization of African people. You have advanced civilization of people who was, trading all over the world, who was sophisticated, who was advanced. And Europeans came in there, and wiped them out. We can go and look at the Kumasi in Ghana. These people, highly advanced civilization, traded, and so many different things. Ivory, gold. The civilization was basically blown to pieces by the Europeans. Blown up, wiped out. We can also look at Timbuktu. Timbuktu is one of the richest, it was one of the biggest cities in the world. It was about 4 or 5 times bigger than London. It was a major city, major hub where they traded in everything. Again, ransacked, wiped out by the Europeans. And you keep finding this stuff all over. You can go and look at Benin, between Nigeria and Togo. Another advanced civilization. These people traded in a lot. They was known for having, the Great City Walls that was about 4 times longer than the Great Walls of China. Another advanced African civilization, again, wiped out by Europeans. And again, you're going to keep finding this same story over and over. Advanced African civilization, British invasion or French invasion, wiped out. African people wiped out. The civilization left in ruins. And these Europeans, the British basically went in there and they bulldozed. They wiped out a lot of ruins, a lot of structures, I should say, and left them in ruins to where you can't hardly, recognize a lot of the civilizations that African people had. A lot of people don't realize that the British control a lot of countries in Africa, and they still control a lot of countries in Africa. A lot of these people that's in place and in power in Africa, as I talked about in the previous video, these dudes is puppets. They're being controlled. They're being purposely put in there to keep the people in line. Meanwhile, outside governments strip the Africans, the land, of its wealth and its resources. And it's the same MO. You go around and you're going to find the same thing when it comes to ancient African civilizations. And this is what we find, dating from, ancient Egypt, up until today. We can look and we can clearly see the accomplishments of African people, ancient African people, leading all the way up to European conquest. Now, you will be hard pressed today to find any other continent on the face of the earth that had more kings, that had more wealth, that had more success than the Africans. More wealth comes out of that continent than any other continent on earth. Everybody knows that. The wealth that it produced, we don't even really know the numbers, but we know it's high billions, hundreds of billions of dollars that is produced there. You're not going to find another continent that is producing this. This is African people we're talking about. Again, Africa feeds the world. Talked about this before. You need to understand that even after, the ancient world was done and over with and European conquest happened, slavery occurred, of course. And even during slavery, we had Africans, again, African Americans now, inventing amazing things and coming up with amazing things. We have, Garrett Morgan, who invented the traffic lights and gas masks. We have Benjamin Bradley, who invented the steam engine. We have Benjamin Montgomery, who invented the propeller. We have so many African Americans that invented so many different things. You got Otis Boykins, who invented the pacemaker. You got Philip Downing, who invented the mailbox with the hinged doors that protect your mail. You got, the list goes on and on. If you've seen Hidden Colors, the whole Hidden Colors series, they talk about a lot of, the inventions and accomplishments that African Americans, came up with. During slavery, after slavery, up until modern day, we are responsible for a lot of the things in America. And again, you can go back into ancient times and see a lot of the stuff that we still use today, like chewing gum and toothpaste, you can find in ancient Africa, you can find in ancient Kemet, and you can attribute its existence to African people, period. And we got to start putting this information out, and people need to start knowing it and putting it into their head. You need to start studying it and learning this information, because they're covering it up and they spending billions of dollars to keep it out of the knowledge of your children, to keep it out of your knowledge. You need to know this stuff. You need to go and look for this stuff. And again, like I said, I'm putting this video out because it's just an overwhelming amount of black people who have absolutely no clue that, Africa was so advanced and so civilized. North Africa, the Sahara wasn't always desert. It was green for a long period of time, thousands of years. And they grew stuff there. I mean, the Nile fed North Africa, still do to this day. You need to understand that so much came off of the accomplishments of African people, and we still use the products. A lot of these things make our life easier today, and we don't get the recognition that we should get.